While history books and romantic novels from England's Victorian era depict people as being very uptight, there were actually more brothels than there were schools. It is estimated that roughly 80,000 women were working as prostitutes in London alone, which reveals how sex-obsessed the culture truly was. Prostitutes were called fallen women because they were seen as an example of what fine, upstanding women in society should never become. However, prostitution was legal and even encouraged in many circles because it was believed that men needed an outlet for the intimate desires that they were forced to repress in their daily lives. It also allowed many women opportunities to earn wages that they could have never earned otherwise. In this episode, we discuss the crazy facts about brothels in the Victorian era. Prostitution was the highest-paying job for a woman at the time. During the Victorian era, the only career options for women were low-paying professions, and many had dangerous working conditions. There were street vendors, who assisted their husbands with their businesses, factory workers, and shopgirls. If a woman was very lucky, she could be a household servant in the estate of a lord or lady. Even educated women who learned high-level skills at business colleges, like typing and shorthand, only made an average of £25 per year. That still wasn't enough money for women to support themselves or their children without the aid of a husband. Night work was the one and only job where a woman could have shorter work hours and earn high wages in cash without depending on a husband to support her. If she was exceptionally beautiful, she could earn enough to achieve total financial independence. If a lower-class woman could afford nice clothes and the finer things in life, it most likely meant that she was a prostitute. There were 3 levels of prostitutes. While all prostitutes had to do similar work, there were 3 levels that a woman could fall into. The lowest class were young women who worked in brothels. They were forced to engage with whichever men the madam assigned to them and often lived in dirty living conditions. The middle-class prostitutes were independent women who had their own apartments as well as streetwalkers. They could pick and choose their own clients. This meant that no madam or pimp was taking a huge chunk of their profits. However, being an independent night worker meant that a woman wouldn't have the protection of the brothel community or on-site medical examiners. The highest class of night workers were women who were beautiful and educated enough to only work for only high-class clients, namely aristocrats or members of parliament. Some worked exclusively for one man. Many of these courtesans ended up marrying their benefactors. Married women sold themselves on the side. Since many of the lower-class jobs simply didn't pay enough to support a large family, it was common for the wives of street vendors to offer their female services on the side while they helped their husbands run the family business. Husbands were completely fine with allowing other men to sleep with their wives. In fact, 50% of street vendors' wives were reported to moonlight as prostitutes. In some instances, the wife happily worked as a night worker since it was a way for her to earn income. In other instances, the husband was acting as a pimp, using his wife as his property, lending her out as he pleased. Many single working women, seamstresses, shopgirls, and servants also worked as casual night workers to supplement their low incomes. However, if it was discovered that a woman had lost her virginity before marriage, it meant that she was fallen and doomed to continue living a life of prostitution. Child prostitution was legal. During the Victorian era, the age of consent was only 13 years old. Child labor still existed at the time. Many lower-class people saw their children as commodities because they could bring income into the family. Boys and girls as young as 11 or 12 could pass as 13-year-olds and had no choice but to enter the trade if their parents sold them into it. It was easy to purchase the virginity of a 13-year-old girl. For a mere £5, Stead purchased someone's daughter, whom he called Lily. This covered the cost of a medical examination to ensure that she was a virgin, and a cut also went to the brothel owner. Since she was still a child, Lily's parents, who were alcoholics, were the ones who took the money she earned as a night worker. After confirming that she was a virgin, the medical examiner recommended that Stead have her with chloroform so she would be unconscious and not put up a struggle while he got on the sad business with her. The public was horrified when they read Stead's articles, and his work led to the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, which made the age of consent 16 years old. W.T. Stead is seen as a hero for fighting for the rights of women, and he was nominated with a Nobel Peace Prize. He died on the Titanic in 1912. Today, the Stead Memorial Fund continues to fight against such acts. Prostitutes were educated. In the 1800s, many women actually did receive a formal education. After receiving tutoring from governesses, high-class women were sent to finishing schools, which taught them social skills, etiquette, and accomplishments like drawing, playing the piano, and dancing, which would make them attractive for marriage. However, they were rarely taught any skills that could actually earn a living. The majority of working-class women couldn't read or write. Henry Mayhew wrote that while only 5% of low-class prostitutes could read or write, it was common for them to eagerly ask men to read newspapers to them so they could stay up to date on current events. Higher-class prostitutes learned to read and write. Many women in the higher classes weren't educated in politics or current events since they were expected to be the angel of the home. This gave them an advantage in terms of becoming more cultured and knowledgeable of the world around them. Victorian sex guides. Men of wealthy Victorian society could look through sporting guides, which were very similar to shopping catalogs. These books detailed the women's ages, physical descriptions, personality type, and their cost, usually £2 to £3 or £5 for a virgin. This way, a man could decide ahead of time between the various women he wished to have intimacy with. Of course, those without wealth were left to find a companion using other means. In Victorian England, one of the most famous guides was the Swell's Night Guide through the Metropolis. In 2018, an extremely rare first edition of this guide was unearthed. It provides an eye-opening insight into prostitution in Victorian London. The salacious book describes the call girls and all the clubs, pubs, bars, and theaters they could be found working in. It rates individual women, describing one, Miss Allen, as a perfect English beauty and another, Mrs. Smith, as a very agreeable woman with pouting lips. The historic book, written by the Honorable F.L.G. in 1841, went to auction and was expected to sell for between £800 to £1,200. However, the guide went for an astonishing £4,000. Some of the most frequent customers at brothels were young men in the military. Venereal disease was so common in the 1800s that it killed just as many military men as war. It also left many able-bodied men unfit for battle. In 1864, to prevent the spread of disease, the Contagious Diseases Act was passed. In towns situated near naval bases, any woman, even if she wasn't a night worker, suspected of carrying a sexually transmitted infection was forced to undergo a medical examination. If a woman resisted, she would be strapped down to a table. If it were discovered that she was infected, she would be forced into hospitalization for up to 3 months. While the risk of contracting venereal diseases was high for prostitutes, they were actually much healthier than average working-class women because they did not have to endure grueling 14-hour workdays in factories. Thanks for watching. To support, please subscribe.